Welcome to Impact Farming, where we introduce you to the people and ideas that will have a massive impact on your farming operation. Brought to you by Farm Marketer. Sit down, start the engine, and let's roll with today's show.
Hello and welcome back to another episode of the Impact Farming Show. Today we have an excellent returning guest. Hi, Tom. How are you?
Great. Good to see you. And thanks for giving me a second chance so that I can maybe even get better at being helpful on your show, right? You know, I always think when I get invited back, they know I can get better.
There's hope. No, you're being bashful. Let's flip that. You are an amazing guest. You have so many neat and innovative ideas. Your last episode was really popular. So I'm excited to bring you back and bring a really neat spin to the conversation about going back to the farm. And that is exactly the title of this episode, Reimagine Going Back to the Farm. So why don't we, before we dive into this exciting conversation, why don't you tell me a little bit about who you are, what you do, and can you touch on your neat entrepreneurial program that you have at the University of Nebraska? You guys have some cool things going on, so I want to bring that up again. Take her away.
Great. Well, thank you. So Tom Field, I'm the director of the Engler Agribusiness Entrepreneurship program at the University of Nebraska-Lincoln, and our program is designed to embolden people to pursue their purpose through the art and practice of entrepreneurship. Most of our students are rural folks. They grew up in farming or rural backgrounds, but we do attract people from really all over the spectrum of humanity, and even international students that are really starting to catch the vision that entrepreneurship is this really cool way to actually live your life. It's not an easy path by any stretch, but a great way to actually find your purpose. I also am a partner in a family business in Colorado. My family's been in the ranching business since about 5 years after the conclusion of the Civil War in the States, which we think it's over, the Civil War. But in America, who knows, right? Yeah. And it's okay to make fun of us down here because we're a funny group. And so I have this chance to work also with farm families and with companies and young businesses. And I get to speak a lot. And so I'm a guy that can't stay focused on any one thing. So I get to start things and help people start things, which is so much fun.
Nice. That's lovely. And I had to get you to bring that up again, because I just think the program you guys have there is just the coolest thing. And there is nothing against traditional university or format, but this kind of your program and why you're the guest on the show and your idea of reimagining going to the farm, to me, it really aligns with the work and the world that we live in today. Everything is so quick. It's so different. It's changing fast. And sometimes, at least the education that I got, it was great, taught me some fantastic skills. But now I've been out of school for so many years. The students, in my opinion, and the kids, young adults going back to the farm need different skill sets, different thoughts, and I think a different conversation. And that's what I love about your concept of reimagining going to the farm. The way we work is totally different. And I think that applies to farming. So why don't we speak about you and what you've seen maybe over your lifetime, and when you work with students, kind of the traditional, I'm going back to the farm, this is how it's going to be. And then we'll flip into your conversation about changing that up. So can you talk about maybe the traditional way and some of the big mistakes, and then we'll flow from there?
Sure. And when we think about going back to the farm, right, there's almost this sort of like a little bit of like a weird thing about like I'm going back, like am I going backwards or am I going forward to the farm? And I've always like tried to think my way through that, like going back to the farm. What does that really mean? Is that geographically? Is it in the way I'm being creative? and it's a challenge, right?
Yeah.
And one of the things that we fail to recognize, and I think this is the biggest mistake that's made, and it's not because people aren't paying attention. It's because you get so caught up in the doing of your business, you forget about the business. And what's happening is, when we think about a family business, and it doesn't matter what it is, it could be a plumbing business, it can be farming. The reality is that there's these transitions occurring. We want to treat it like it's a static thing. It's not static. It's evolving and it's evolving in 4 separate spheres. And this is what makes family businesses so challenging. First of all, human beings, we don't stay the same. No. We develop and we grow and we learn new skills and we get new perspectives and we get tired of doing certain things, right? I mean, at some point in time, like, I don't want to do that anymore. Like, somebody else can do that. And we change, right? And that's part of the developmental process for a human being. Simultaneously, the business is changing. My great-great-grandfather, when he started the ranch, he was an entrepreneur. He was the first one. And our business now that business is a very mature business. It's changed. It's like a human being. It's gone through these cycles of maturity. Then you've got your business structure, right? And the fact that if you've got families inside the business structure, those families are also maturing, right? And changing. The empty nest syndrome that so many people talk about. The kids are out of the house. Now what do we do with each other? Because we've spent the last 20 years focused on the kids, and now all of a sudden here's this spouse that wants that, like, who are you? And don't you have some place to take the kids right now so I can have some peace and quiet? Yeah. And then there's ownership, right? And that ownership thing is changing. So you've got all these dimensions and they're shifting. And when we try to treat it like it's static in the midst of what is healthy and very real maturing stages at the human being level, at the business structure level, at the family level, right? And in ownership, that's when we make mistakes, because we start to assume that the business is the same it was a decade ago. All the people are the same they were a decade ago, and we don't make allowances for that up here. Okay. And so I think that's one of the biggest challenges. And the second thing is, we have this because we're loyal to where we grew up, we're loyal to the family. We sometimes let the loyalty, which reaches in here and grabs our heart, right? We let that we just jump, and we didn't stop to ask, is there even water in the pool? And so I think that's, from my perspective, those are the things that we fail to have those really important conversations before we actually make the choice. Conversations, if we were applying for a job with somebody else, we would be thinking about things, we'd be asking a lot of questions, there'd be contracts, there would be a lot of formal approach. We go back to a family business sometimes and it's just sort of like, come on in, right? And like as if, and you just go to work, no conversation. Yeah. And that's a huge mistake.
I love it. And I love that we're bringing this conversation to agriculture. And I think it's naturally changing. But I always say I have a leg on both sides of the fence. I own a non-agriculture business, farm marketer, my media company. So I'm very used to structures and processes and budget lines. And if somebody's coming into my business, that is well thought out, budgeted. There's a description. I'm not just saying, okay, you're my family, you can come in. You need, in my business, to fit a skill set, there needs to be X many dollars that's going to come in to pay for that wage. And sometimes I think you're so right. There's so much passion and assumption and legacy in farming that we sometimes just assume. And that's great that we can do that. But I have seen, and I look at the way we kind of came back, we're different. We ended up working with Anthony's parents, getting some cattle. They helped us get off the ground, and it was amazing. But our end, I've never actually talked about this. We never wanted to pressure his parents to retire. He was retiring one day and then expanding the next. So we just said, he's not ready. We're not going to pressure him. Okay. So we're just going to do our off farm, grow our herd. And then we pivoted. We did our own thing. But sometimes even I'm being a little long-winded, but I want to share this. Sometimes even with different personality types, they're not big conversationalists. So it's, hey, I'm here and we're going to do this. So you just see so much. And you know what? There's so many levels, Tom. We're opening a can of worms here. I like that we're saying, be deliberate and think about this different. So I'll throw that back onto you. I love everything you just said. Those are some of the mistakes you see. Now let's flip that. What does reimagining going back to the farm mean to you?
So when I think about reimagining the process of entering a business, making a conscious, intentional choice to give a piece of my life, a section of this precious time I get on this planet to a business entity, I'm going to give some serious thought to what that looks like. And there's a whole series of questions that come with that. And for me, it fits into sort of these kinds of capacities. It's number one, we need to know, are we going to look at this business as an opportunity for growth and an opportunity to morph and change and evolve and potentially pivot, and even pivot, maybe even dramatically. Our ranch is in a high public use kind of space, lots of government land, very, very high recreation economy, off-roading motorcycles and mountain bikers and, you name it, hot air balloonists, skiers, hunters, hikers, the whole thing. And the reality is there's some really great opportunities to engage in that business model with a land resource like ours. Now we're not staffed to do it today because we all laugh, our current on-ground staff, they're not folks who are going to run Disneyland well because they don't play the characters well. They're cowboys, right? They do their work. And so we'd have to restaff, but that's, you look at your resources and you say, okay, what else could be done here? So that's question one. And then I think you have to literally, as a family, you have to say to yourself, okay, what is the business going to become? And who or what skill sets, as you said, really fit here? And I think they fall into three roles, right? Any business, there's an operational side. That's the doing, right? It's the very hands-on, very technical, skilled bit. And every business has an operational side to it. And that's where many people enter the business, right? And then there's also this sort of management side, which is more tactical, which is looking ahead, not just to today or this week, but looking ahead on a 3-month, a 6-month, or maybe even a year out sort of perspective, and beginning to plan and think about management of, everything from a calving season to a marketing season to a harvest season. And then the next one is really the strategy piece, which is leadership. Mm-hmm. And what we need operationally in the business, what we need tactically in the business, what we need strategically in the business, it's pretty hard to find one person who does all of those things well. And it's also hard to imagine that every one of our children are well suited to one or all of those roles. So when we're reimagining the business, we've got to be thinking about, okay, let's think about our talent pool as well. And what's the best professional development for the people that are under our stewardship and our care, right? So it might be our children, it might be our children and their spouses, it might be our grandkids, depending on who it is. It might be each other, right? I mean, I think one of the mistakes that a lot of farm owners make is they get to be about 50 and they forget about their own professional development. Like, are you ready to leave operations and really become the strategist for the company? Or are you really an operations person and you've got a daughter who really would be a great strategic leader for the farm? Then let's make her the strategic leader. Let's get her ready for that.
Nice.
Right. And those are the kinds of conversations that they're hard to have, because they mean we have to look at our family and our kids. We don't look at them equally, like everybody is the same. We have to look at them as the really unique creations that they are. And that means harder conversations, which, especially if you're a guy, you don't like.
Really?
What a surprise.
I love that you just own it. And I shouldn't say that. Many men are good chatters. I'm kind of holding my breath on that one. Yeah. You in the audience.
To be released later.
Yeah, if you're a good man, if you're a good chatter and you're in the audience, shoot me an email and let me know. Correct my stereotype, okay? I'm okay with that. Okay, that's really great. And I like that because, again, it's a double-edged sword, I think, with farming. We often have a place to come back to. We assume it, but we're not quite deliberate, or we're not thinking outside the box. And it's very easy. And you look in multi-generational farm families, you go, oh, my grandpa bought this land, or my great grandpa bought the land, and then my grandpa took it over, and then my dad worked it. So of course I'm going to go back to the farm, and I'll work a few years, do my university, whatever it is, and I'm going to go back. And it's just sometimes maybe a bit of that autopilot versus that very deliberate business culture where you're planning and being intentional. And in a workplace, you have a training budget and you want your team to develop themselves. And there's also that process that I like in the corporate world of grooming somebody. When I hired somebody as an admin, they sure as heck are not coming in as top sales dog or whatever the case is. It's going to be a young individual in admin, which would be operational. They're going to come in and you're going to work your way up. So if I'm coming back to the farm, maybe I come back, boots on the ground, I'm going to grow. What's my learning plan, right? Kind of that concept.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. And to leave that off the table is, we just don't set ourselves up to even be able to adapt to the changing conditions in the marketplace, market opportunities, et cetera. And I think one of the biggest challenges is to also say, all right, let's be honest about the compensation, right? And how much can our business afford to pay somebody, right? Yeah. And it's not about, it might not even be about, excellence or capacity of the person coming back. It might just be, look, the business can afford this much. And so if the person still wants to come back, then it's a question, okay, so then how do we do this so that they can have a growth opportunity from a financial perspective that might involve a side gig? What about spouses? And I think this is one that and my generation, so I'm in my early 60s, I think my generation and older, our biggest challenge is that we look at somebody coming back into the business, to a farming or ranching business, even an agribusiness, and we make the assumption that their spouse will want to be like our mother or our dad was.
Amen.
And what a bad assumption. It's a terrible assumption because, for example, I look at so I have 5 children, 3 who are grown, 2 who are married, 1 who's about to get married. And I look at my daughter-in-laws, they're all smart, talented, creative, capable people who literally have career options and opportunities that extend so much further beyond our business. And so that's one of the other things about reimagining coming back is, can we create new enterprises, and does the farm have the capacity to make some smaller investments in helping a son, a daughter, a son-in-law, a daughter-in-law start businesses that are maybe side gigs or side hustles, right? They're kind of on the side, a furniture making deal in the winter months, or they're going to become a new attorney in town, or they're going to have a dental practice or an accounting practice, or they're going to bring retail to our community, or whatever it is. And then we're starting to diversify. And as a family, what we're doing is we're creating a broader base of wealth that takes some of the pressure off of the farm to have to provide for everybody equally. And especially if there's multiple folks coming back, we've got, I think diversification is super important. Like what you and your, husband are doing makes so much sense to me. I think that's the model. And I think it's a model that people need to really be aware of.
I like it. And you know what? It takes, and we all know this, and everybody out there, sometimes there's somebody working on the farm and off the farm. There's so many different models there. Having that off-farm income is just such a safety net and takes a lot of the pressure off the farming operation, right? To let it do its thing, to be a crutch for bad years. And we've seen that with our farming operation. Fortunately, it just helps. And kind of flipping in, I love that you bring that entrepreneurial world to agriculture and just like an explosion of potential. With the internet, we know, well, look at how many YouTube stars there are from agriculture alone. My goodness. And the internet side hustles, just take it away. And you deal with a lot of different young students and people that have done that. And how great to be able to be back on the farm, but have your own little enterprise, right?
Yes. When we think, historically, every generation pretty much that decided to re-engage in production agriculture had skill sets that could have generated income outside of just the traditional cropping or livestock enterprises. Yep. But when we were in a world where we were pretty much marketing those skill sets or those products that maybe we could make on the side, we were really only marketing those locally. It was pretty limited. We could only grow in really incremental little baby steps with those businesses. But now, for example, we've got young furniture makers that have come out of our program. One who is full-time, another though who is farming and ranching and making furniture. So what the internet has allowed him to do is to sell very specific items, lines that really make sense, that he's really good at, to a much broader audience. And literally his biggest challenge now is trying to manage the pressure from the side hustle, which is like wanting to take all his time, which has high margins, and take time away from farming, ranching. And so one of the things that we also do, I think, in all of this is figure out how do we also grow a labor pool locally, so that as family members, sometimes maybe we begin to let go of some of the operational things that potentially can be farmed out to other folks in the community. Grow your own through high school programs, etc. We've got online boutiques, right? Young women who are running these. They're living on the farm. They're farming in concert with their family, but they're also running an online boutique, which is doing three things. One, it's feeding them creative in terms of creative space. Secondly, they're building a community, and they have a social network that is so much more supportive. I remember when I left college, went back home to our ranch, and in the summers I was on our mountain place, and it was 65 miles to the nearest town, and the closest neighbor was 15 miles away, and he was really old and grumpy. so it wasn't really a social network, right? And to be honest, it was lonely, right? I loved it because I loved the work, but it was lonely. And had I been married and had maybe a spouse who was not used to that lifestyle, she would have, I think it would have been impossible, because as I look back on that part of our ranch, there were never married guys who worked there because it was too remote. Okay. So, the internet allows us to develop this sort of social network as well, which I think is really, really important. And the side hustles are across the board. We've got podcasters, and we got people who are, taking equipment and reimagining the equipment, remaking it. We've got, welders who are making panels and gates and livestock handling systems, and people who are using all the skill sets and all the things they know how to do, from making really fantastic, big, beautiful metal farm signs to, fabricating products that are sold into construction trade. It's just across the board. And even people writing code sort of on the side. And I think that's really exciting. But it says when we do that, okay, how do we reimagine the farm to allow this to happen? Which means the farm has to also, we have to figure out how to put flexibility into the farming operation. And we know that there's a lot of seasonality, and there's X amount of flex in some seasons, but we just have to get smarter and more strategic about how we bring in help and how we do that. I think there's cool opportunities if we just step back and say, how could we do this differently, right? And we don't want to do that sometimes because we're so caught up in what we're doing right now, we forget to think about what if we had to start over, or what if we got to start from scratch? We might do it really differently.
Yeah. And I love it because there's so many options, even from when you joined the farm, you have a few years on me. And then from when we joined the farming organization to now, the technology's there and you see it happening. And the neat thing, I have this slogan saying that farmers are the original entrepreneur, because they really are. You're always creating, you're building, you're growing. So the fact that some of your students and people are leaving school and you can start up an online store pretty much like that. And the coolest part about it is, and you'll know this, we hear it, there's so many people, our consumers, that are interested in farming, the disconnect, right? So now when it's guys or gals and they start their accounts on social media and they're building up a following, they're not only advocating and promoting and connecting consumers, but they can capitalize on that and do the value add from the products. If it's goat milk, they're making soaps or whatever the case is, right? YouTubing stars that have some phenomenal numbers, like bigger than even mainstream entrepreneurs. So it is so neat that now that mindset, that naturally innovative mindset of farming can meet the technology and the low barriers of entry. I like now that we're bringing that conversation to plan intentionally, reimagine, use those possibilities as going back to the farm. And maybe you're a part-time seasonal help on the farm because that's all you can afford, and you're doing this over here. And then just kind of like us, we started out with a group of 10 cows. We both worked. And then you know what? You retain some heifers. And then you go and buy another group. And then sure enough, it's, okay, there's something substantial here. We're X many years in. Anthony, do you want to make the leap? Does it make sense to quit your job? Yeah. And then instead of just, hey, Dad, we're back, pressure. And sometimes if it's not communicated, there's that uncomfortable, well, the farm can't afford to pay you. What's going on, right? You do that natural. And there's just so many opportunities. And even you mentioned podcasters. I chatted with one of your students, Shay, right? Cattle Conversations, like blow my mind how smart that girl is. And the opportunities, the fact that she's in school, starting a podcast, wanting to farm, it just blows my mind the opportunities that individuals leaving school have now compared to you and I. right?
And isn't it exciting too that for the first time we're starting to break ourselves out of commodity pricing thinking?
Yeah.
Right. The farming community, people in rural America are finally saying, look, we have a story to tell. It's worth something. We have resources and experiences to provide people, and it's worth something. We can create beautiful, fantastic, items in the marketplace, and they should be priced at what they're worth, right? Their true value. And it's what's really fun about that is we let go of, number 2 dent corn commodity pricing in our head. And all of a sudden, the world is a very different and unique looking place, right? And we're so fortunate in North America to live in a place where those things are possible because we have the infrastructure and because we have a cultural narrative that still says to us, like, go make something happen. Right? It's the story of Canada. It's the story of the United States, right? It's doers, makers, creators. And that's why, we're so fortunate and so blessed to live in this part of the world.
I love it. And again, I go back to social media. I connect and follow and am friends with all these strangers, right? You're friends with all these strangers.
Yeah. Who are these people?
Pardon?
Who are these people?
Yeah, they're my best friends, but I don't know them. Oh, it's funny. But you look at that, and whether that was a person that was going to come back to the farm to do the full-time farming, or it's the off farm, the husband, the wife, whatever the case is, I don't stereotype, but I follow multiple accounts. They're beef farmers, and instead of shipping them off to the auction mart and getting X, exactly like you said, commodity pricing, they've built a brand. And you go through their feed and the gorgeous pasture pictures and the fact that they can just build a box beef business, right? That's something that you can start, and then that takes the pressure off. And it just, again, going back, naturally goes hand in hand. You're connecting with these people. Hey, look in my farm raised beef. And then people, hey, I want some. And you go through the comments. Look at that. Every entrepreneur in Winnipeg or any city would dream of that kind of connection with their consumer, right?
And using that value added mindset, what it's doing for families. Just a very fast story. So we've got a family from Western Nebraska, and 3 of their kids have been through our program, and they've had a dryland farming and cattle operation for years and years and years. Wonderful people, absolutely the kind of people you want as your neighbors. And this last year, they looked at the COVID thing and they said, okay, we're getting into beef business. We're going to go from selling calves. We're going to start selling. We're going to put our name on this product. And we're going to begin to sell, beef, both locally and more regionally. And I asked one of the sons is in our program right now, and I asked him the other day, I said, so what's changed? And he said, well, what's changed is we are now having family strategic meetings that have so much energy and excitement in them. He said, what it's done for our family is phenomenal. And they've always been a strong family, but now they're like this pulled together. And one of the older brothers is in the Air Force, and and he, of course, being in the Air Force, travels a lot. And so what they've figured out is like he's their best marketing, because he's got all these friends all over the world, all over the United States, who know him, and now they know the story. And now here's this product, and hey, we can buy beef from this family, and this is our brother in arms, right? And literally their growth plan as a whole is completely devoted around the off-farm members' friends. Like, isn't that fantastic? I just love it. And all of a sudden now the off-farm family member is playing a really important role, because what are they? They're the marketer. They're the distribution person, right? They're the salesperson. I just love it. Yeah. So, and in the past we would have just, without the technology and the energy that's around us in the middle of COVID, we would have all just retreated, right? And instead, what I've seen, what's really exciting is I've seen so many farm families actually do really exciting, creative things that are going to open doors for generations. I'm so excited about what I've seen entrepreneurship doing in families, because it really doesn't make it simpler, but it makes it more fun. It's more energizing.
I love sayings, as you know. We've exchanged quotes and sayings a few times here, but what is it? Problems are the root of all innovation. I can't remember the exact word, but yes, COVID, my goodness, we've seen beef sales. The stores couldn't keep it on the shelf. Now, the fact that probably that many more farmers capitalized on that, that's amazing.
Highest beef demand in 30 years. It's crazy, isn't it?
Highest beef demand?
In 30 years. This last year, according to Cattle Facts in Denver. It's fantastic.
Lovely. And, I can't help but imagine or think that COVID has really probably helped a lot of consumers become agriculture's biggest fans, because we've been so mindless to where our food comes from. Now, all of a sudden, you can't get toilet paper. That one still blows my mind, but you can't get toilet paper. All the food, the beef is gone. Now there's a scarcity. I think probably for the first time since when, Tom, have we actually had to think about our food supply and not be first world problem people? Ooh, beef. Ooh, right? Some of the first world mentality and pickiness that we have displayed. I don't love this situation, but I like the fact that consumers will go, oh, wait a minute. This just doesn't all happen magically.
Yeah, since the Depression, probably the Dust Bowl era in the States, in my lifetime, not one time have I ever thought, I might not be able to get the food my family needs. And watching the transformation in the last year of folks that literally had to come to grips with, wow, right? I'm economically hurting, and now the food distribution system looks like it may be not as much of a perfect assumption as I've had in the past. And it's, I think the other thing that's happened is people have had time, and so they got back into cooking. And I think people have rediscovered how much joy there is in being part of the preparation of this most personal thing, right, in our life, which is the consumption of food. So it's been, I just think it's opened doors that, and again, none of us wanted to go at it this way, right? I would rather have discovered this minus COVID, and its impact on people is awful. But, again, from every tragedy and every challenge, there emerges a new learning and an adaptation, and that creates opportunity. And I think it creates a new narrative for us in agriculture with consumers. And I'm super excited about it. And now we get to earn that trust over and over and over again, which is a really powerful opportunity.
I love it. This conversation is so exciting because that the side hustle, the side business, sometimes things can be tough on the farm, right? With commodity prices and drought, and maybe it gets a little status quo. If you can bring in that side operation, one, financially, it takes the pressure off. But like you said, there's a level of excitement and innovation. Maybe where this farm business is mature, we're bringing in something new. And I don't know about all personalities, but personally myself, I get most excited in life and engaged when I'm doing something new. If I ever find I'm feeling a little stagnant, I don't go get a new job or create, I am my own job. I create new opportunities to help serve farmers and my advertising clients. If I'm feeling stagnant, it's like, okay, time to innovate. So for people and farm families, it's just a neat opportunity for income and just excitement. It's possibility. And I love that conversation where maybe sometimes as farmers, we can do the, oh goodness, prices are bad. And maybe that frustrated tone, you can bring in a whole new, fresh, innovative world, right?
And if we're thinking about the multi-enterprise opportunities and even the off-farm things that maybe we can help stimulate, for our kids or their spouses or our grandkids or whatever, all of a sudden now, the full human talent pool in the family, there's a place for them. right? And it doesn't have to be, you've got to come back and run the combine, or you have to run the planter, or you have to, right? We're going to need you to work occasionally, seasonally on the farm because we need your help. But not everybody has to be good at the same thing and then compete over that, right? Because think about how many brothers and brothers and sisters and brother-in-laws and brothers and sister-in-laws, right, have fought over trying to establish mastery over a limited set of territory. And it just creates disharmony. But if we side gig our way out and we think broader about, our resources and our possibilities, all of a sudden now, it's not just a question of how far out there do we go, and as opposed to how do we make this little closed space work for a bunch more people? Because that's hard, if not impossible.
Well, and you look at it too in big farm families. It typically, we'll just throw out that stereotype. The oldest son took over the farm. Oh, how frustrating is that for sons and daughters 2 to 7 or 10, whatever the case is, where maybe half of them love the farm and want to be back. Well, now they can all dip their toes in, right? I just love it. These conversations are exciting. Sometimes we get in our ruts in business and farming and life. I always like looking for potential versus the obstacles. And to me, this is an exciting conversation. And I'm so tickled pink and thrilled for the next generation of farmers that are joining the farm, and all the knowledge, podcasts, video shows, the knowledge, the technology. My gosh, sky's the limit for them. Really.
And I think that the thing that unleashes all of that is that the older generation, the senior generation in agriculture today, our job, I think, I have the saying, and it's a little bit tongue in cheek, but senior members of farm families become one of two things. They either become masterful mentors, that they just become these unbelievably wise, sage counsels who help the next generation really grow, or they become world-class mess makers, right? Because they won't let go, and they won't listen, and they drag their heels, and they won't communicate, and they won't think about possibilities. And that's on us. We have to, as the senior generation, I think we have to develop this really generative thinking, which is, I don't want the business to survive the way I did it. I want my family to thrive in an environment they care and love and feel deeply about. That's different than I'm a Angus producer, and by golly, they will produce Angus until, the next millennia, right? Or whatever it is, right? Rye, whatever, it doesn't matter, right? But the senior generation has got to come to the table, and it's scary. We're going through these conversations with our kids right now, and there's moments I'm like, wait a minute, that's not how we do it. And then I have to go, no, that's bad thinking. They're trying to reimagine this place, be part of helping them do it, and bring, 60 years of experience to help them do it well.
That is hard, Tom. I'm in the middle. We don't have children, but if we had children, I'd be in the middle, right? There's the older generation, us, and then there would be kids coming up along the line. It takes a lot of, what's the word? Self-confidence, nurturing, to be able to step back and go, okay, my hackles are getting up. They're trying to destroy everything we've created, is how you're going to see it. That's not how we do it. It is so very hard as a person. I find that too in life. It's like, okay, wait, breathe. It's not only Tracy's way. Let's explore this. But it takes a lot of self-development and restraint to be able to go through that. And I really quick here, I don't share a lot of family stuff on here, for good reason, to be respectful, but I was chuckling when you were saying, gosh darn it, we're Black Angus beef producer from now to here. one of the reasons I do this show, I've said a little bit of this before, is I have seen succession planning not happen and destroy families and destroy farms. And you know what? This instance that I'm thinking of, all this person, we'll keep it anonymous here, all this person, this older generation, grandpa type figure, all he ever wanted was that farm to continue on, but he wouldn't let go. And sure enough, all the boys, a little bit of traditional thinking there, all the boys moved off farm because he wouldn't let go. He didn't provide for an opportunity, no conversation. They all got careers. My goodness, when he actually started chatting about turning it over, they weren't boys. They were 40, 50, 60, I can't remember the time frame, but do you think they want to be taking on $1 million of debt at that point? Kind of by that point, people are comfortable in a career and starting to think of retirement versus risk. So yeah, you can do it that way, but I always say, what's your end goal? If that farm is that important to you, you need to step back, get out of your own way, and then let the next generation and you reimagine it, right? And that's what I just love this. This is a conversation, Tom. Thank you. I think that agriculture needs to have. So many people are already doing it, but sometimes we get stuck in status quo, right?
Exactly. And it comes down to really a fundamental question, and it's two parts. Is the farm an anchor, right? Cemented to the bottom of the ocean and it holds the ship in one place, or is it a sail? And I think there may be a balance of that. And then as the people coming into the business or already in the business, that's the question we have to ask ourselves. Is my legacy as a leader going to be I was the anchor that wouldn't let anything move, or was I the sail? Mm. Right? And there are very few really cool romantic country songs about anchors. There's a lot of great pop songs about being a sail. So there's something about being a sail or the wind behind people that lets them actually grow and change and develop and morph. And in the end, be great stewards of the legacy and be great stewards of the land and actually take farming and agriculture into the future in a new and cool way. Not that it's always going to happen, because there's always going to be challenge. But if we tie the next generation to this is how we do it, that's a tough sentence to put on a human being.
I agree. That is so powerful. That I don't even know where to go, Tom. We can continue talking for 2 hours. I want to ask you for final words of wisdom. That's why I'm a bit at a loss right now, but I don't want to try and make you top all that. Floor is yours. Let's say there is a young farmer, and here I'm putting you on the hot seat. There's a young farmer in the audience and they're coming back to the farm. And I know a lot of young farmers listen to this because they're hungry for that knowledge, right? To learn. So you're speaking to somebody, pretend they're your son, your daughter. What words of wisdom? You have 5-10 minutes to talk to them. What would you say to them, flowing through with what you said before, but some final closing words on reimagining going to the farm?
I think step one is to really get serious about the why. What it isn't just about, well, this is what I know. Well, why is that attractive to you? And so if you want to be in agriculture and you want to be in the family business and you want to be there, what's the why? And be clear about it. Because sometimes we make assumptions about others, and we need to ask other people, so why? And one of the questions I ask students to ask their parents when they're going through this process of thinking about going back is, the next time you're maybe out driving between pastures with Dad, just look across the truck at him and say, Dad, I'm just in awe. You've given 40 years to this. Can you tell me why you did it? And then when they tell you, then say, ask again. So tell me more about that, and help dad get to his why. And the next time, you're with mom in the grain cart or in the combine or wherever you're interacting with mom, you say the same thing. So mom, man, you've poured your heart into this. So why? Like, help me understand, because I want to know, because it matters. Your why matters so much to what we're going to do. And what that does, it helps us, one, get to some answers. And here's the reality, and here's the downside of that question. There's going to be times we may not like the answer we hear. And so sometimes that's when we have to say, okay, so what do I want most? Do I want most a relationship with these two people, or do I most want to be in farming with them? And if being in farming with them is going to harm the relationship, then maybe I should let go of the farming with them and say, look, I'm going to go side gig or do my own thing, and I'm going to have this relationship. So, you've got to know what your end goal is. And then some other things that I think are just worth asking is to really get that conversation going before you dive all the way back in. What is our goal? Is our goal to grow this company? Is our goal to stabilize this company? Is our goal, golly, it might be to shrink the company. I don't know. And is it to grow or sell? What does retirement look like to you? And for many farmers, the answer is, what was that word again? they like my dad, he had no vision about, he wasn't going to. And we knew that. And that was but the good news was it was communicated. It was very, very clear. His retirement was going to involve death. That was retirement, right? He was going to quit. Right. He was going to quit ranching the day he died. Yep. And that's how he did it, right? On his terms, and fair enough. What skill sets do I bring back to the business? How do I play a role in this, right? Because one of the things that the next generation also has to do is has to honor the generation that came before them, and we've got to be thoughtful. If I was going to be recruited by another company or by my home farm, the recruiting company would be saying to me, okay, Tom, what can you bring to the table? What are you going to do for us? Shouldn't the farm ask the same question, right? So what do you bring? What's your capacity? And so there's a rights and responsibilities thing here that has to be worked out. And I think the conversation, though, what we have to come to grips with, the conversation doesn't just happen overnight. And if we've come from a maybe, multi-generations of where conversations are pretty surface, then we have to work really hard at this. And it's hard. Like, really good, deep, transparent conversations, they are hard work. And we just have to be okay with that. And and if we have a moment, we have to have the discipline to step away, go for a walk, collect ourselves, and then come back to the table. And you establish the rules, right? We're going to have conflict in trying to sort this all out as a family, but here's going to be our rules. One, we're not going to do this around mom's table because that's sacred ground. So we're not going to do it there. We'll have the meeting in the shop or in town or at the church basement. And if somebody gets, emotional or angry, they need a moment. That's fine. We're human beings. Of course, we're going to have moments of anger and emotion. So you get 15 minutes or 30 or whatever it is you say, and you go walk or, go punch the pillows or whatever it is that you do. But here's the deal. You have to come back to the table. And when you come back to the table, we're going to be waiting for you. And we're all coming back to the table. And we'll fight our way through this, right? I mean, it's that. So I think there's, all the exciting thing and opportunities are there, but we also have to just really be smart about the fact that we are the family businesses are hard work. And I want to share a quote. Tom Peters, who, is, I think, one of the brightest business minds that maybe has ever walked the planet. This is what he says. He says, if there is one weapon for the manager's arsenal in any organization, it is listening. To listen with respect, to listen enough, and then to act fast upon what you hear. That may be the ultimate expression of the art of contemporary management and leadership in turbulent times.
Nice.
And that is a two-party command. It is not just the senior generation that has to listen, it's all of us. But if we listen, and we listen intentionally, and we ask questions for clarification, and then we act as a group, we'll certainly build an exciting and vibrant enterprise or series of enterprises, and in the process, not only preserve the family, but strengthen it and grow it in ways that we maybe never could have imagined.
I love it. I'm so in awe of the knowledge that you share. And I want to thank you on behalf of the show and our audience. And you know what? I want to commend you for the work you do, Tom. Your students are so lucky to have you. Aside from reimagining going to the farm and all the potentials, what also excites me equally is the knowledge that's available to the next generation that's going back. I always find it a little bit ironic that we need to make our biggest decisions, and I say this respectfully, I was there, been through it. We often make our biggest decisions when we don't have a lot of life experience. And in the past, maybe not a lot of guidance. So I am so thankful for you and your work, and your students are so lucky, but that you're taking the time and forward thinking to have these conversations instead of somebody going back to the farm and fumbling through and maybe wrecking relationships. Knowledge that you bring to the table like this can help the next generation come back and think about it a little bit more than maybe we have in the past. We don't just show up and say, hey, I'm here. Now they can think about it and truly reimagine it. I'm just so excited. And again, thank you for what you do and your knowledge that you share with the world. It's just phenomenal.
Well, and thanks for the platform and the great work and with absolute sincerity, I get to do this with a lot of different people. I love being on the show with you just because your energy feeds me and it makes me think in really great ways. And so the resource you're providing to your listeners, so powerful. And it's just so exciting to have like these connections through space, time, and geography, and we're not as limited as we once were. And I would say that's to all the young people who are really thinking about, let's get into agriculture and let's make a difference. That's your key thing, is build your community, have your cheerleaders, have those folks who will kick you in the tail when you need it, because you're going to need it at times, and build that community. And your community can be built both locally, virtually, and across borders. And it's just super exciting what the future holds.
Lovely.
So thank you. Thank you.
You are very welcome. The feeling is mutual. If people want to connect with you, you're on social media, right?
A little bit. I'm one of those. I have a social media team.
Yes, right.
So they because they're smarter than I am, and much more creative. They handle that. But people can get a hold of me. I'm on LinkedIn. That's probably the best way. But I also, let me just share my email, because that's tfield2@unl.edu. You can also go to engler.unl.edu and get to our website and learn more about who we are and what we do. And if you want to follow our podcasts and social media, YouTube channels, The Engler Journey, that's where you'll find a lot of really cool resources and a lot of great stories about the real value in our program, which are the young people who are creating these fantastic enterprises and who are kind enough and generous enough to let an old goat like me come along with them.
Fantastic. Thank you again. And thank you in the audience. If you love this episode as much as I did, share it. Get Tom's words and wisdom out there so other farmers can benefit. Thank you, Tom. Thank you in the audience, and join you guys next week. Bye-bye.
You've been listening to Impact Farming. For more great episodes and articles designed to help you manage and grow your farming operation, head on over to farmmarketer.com. Don't forget to sign up while you're there. We will see you on the next episode.